Right, so do we just want to start as well with a little bit of an introduction to yourself?
Sure. Well, I'm Isabelle. I'm a nutritionist, and I've specialised in fertility for the last 20 years or so, and working within the IVF sort of environment as well. So I work with people going through IVF, but also natural fertility as well. And of course, I advise on both male and female fertility to optimize the chances for IVF success. And hopefully, yes, I do make it achievable, make it doable. There isn't a blueprint, obviously, for this, and one size does not absolutely fit all. Nobody needs to be perfect, but there's a lot of things that you can do in order to help optimize your chances of IVF success.
Amazing. Brilliant. Well, no, we're really looking forward to this webinar, showing all of your knowledge because I know you have a lot. So we are going to start off with some foundations of fertility nutrition. And I think sometimes nutrition can feel very, very overwhelming when it comes to IVF. But I think we're going to break it down and really discuss what it means to have a sort of fertility diet and whether that changes in IVF. So maybe you just want to start with, what is a fertility diet? What should we be following?
So obviously, as I said just before, there isn't anything absolutely specific. The diet that has been recommended, as I think a lot of people are aware of, as the best sort of diet to follow for fertility, is a higher protein, lower carbohydrate, Mediterranean style diet. And that in effect means that you don't want to just live on bread and pasta and potatoes and carby things. You want the protein is super important because it provides the building blocks for growth. So increasing your protein intake is actually very important just for general fertility, and we can go into that a bit later for IVF. But Mediterranean, it's very colourful, it's lower in processed foods, it's lower in high saturated fat foods, hasn't got sort of artificial sweeteners and things. It's just a very natural diet, and realistically you want to eat as naturally as you can, I think, don't you, Rebecca? You just don't want to have all these if you can limit your toxins coming into your body, if anything that we're in control of, I think is really, really important.
Yeah, no, brilliant. And I guess it looks a little bit, to break it down a bit like this, these are sort of the main components we'd be looking for.
Absolutely. So carbohydrates ideally would be whole grains. And actually a no carbohydrate diet isn't recommended. I do see a lot of people who are sort of wanting to go keto and stuff. It's not a long-term solution. And there are potential issues with not having any carbohydrates, because the carbohydrates will give you, particularly whole grains, will give you fiber, they will give you B vitamins, they will give you all sorts of nutrients, they will give you energy. So they are important. Fruit and veg, extremely important. They will give you the antioxidants that are required to support the optimal quality of eggs and sperm. And protein, as we've discussed. And yes, obviously there are vegetarian and vegan protein sources as well, which can be found in the vegan protein sources, nuts and seeds, pulses and legumes. With vegetarian, you can add eggs, and some good quality dairy is ideal as well. And if you're not vegetarian or vegan, including good quality some lean meat, definitely fish, particularly oily fish, I think is really, really helpful.
And a really good question has just come in. Is going organic good?
In an ideal world, we will all be organic, because we used to be all organic. And so, yes, the answer to that is, however, organic comes at a price, and that can be unachievable. You know, to be honest, a lot of organic food is extremely expensive. It also, it can limit your variety, because if you go into a shop or a supermarket and you're wanting to buy 15 different things, and actually on the organic section there's only 3 or 4, and you limit yourself to those 3 or 4 things, I think you are missing out on some of the key nutrients that might be useful. So in an ideal world, organic, of course. And there is something called the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15 that you can look up actually online, which tends to tell you what has potentially the least pesticide residue, maybe. And personally, I often will, I don't buy all organic, because if I know that something like broccoli, for instance, doesn't have a huge amount of pesticide residue, then why would you buy, then it's quite fine to buy it non-organic and keep maybe some of the more sprayed products to be organic. So I think it's mix and match, but I wouldn't want to forfeit a varied, healthy diet and a healthy intake of a variety of fruit and veg, just because you're wanting to be organic. So it's a sort of, it's not a straightforward answer, but I hope that helps.
No, that is helpful. I think it's working within your means as well. I think there's only so
Absolutely.
much you can do as well with the food environment.
I agree.
Yeah, and another question on gluten-free, some good whole grain carbohydrate choices, I guess, as well, if you are celiac, or for whatever reason, if you don't have gluten, what are some good options to have to still get in those whole grains?
So things like buckwheat, obviously, whole grain buckwheat is brown rice and whole grain rice products. Quinoa, which is technically a seed, but people sort of use it as a grain, which is gluten-free. Sort of polenta and stuff like that actually can be gluten-free. I mean, there are lots of, and seeds, sprouted seeds. There's a lot of breads and things that are created from seeds these days, and using sprouting seeds and pulses. So you can use things like chickpea flour, which is called gram flour, almond flour, hazelnut flour. There's all sorts of various options there. And yes, if you're celiac, clearly you can't have gluten. There are people who are not celiac, but who do find that they have a sensitivity or an intolerance to gluten. And in that case, I think it is worth bearing that in mind, because if you're feeling that things are potentially affecting you, it is a pro-inflammatory reaction, and we want to try and look at keeping our diets as anti-inflammatory as possible.
Yeah, no, brilliant. And then just a question on the fish oils. Can you, are we allowed to intake and substitute fish oils with supplementary products, e.g. omega substitutes, in case we don't eat fish at all? So yeah, as someone who doesn't eat any fish, sort of
Absolutely.
what are the ways around that?
Absolutely. Well, obviously, a lot of vegetarians, well, all vegetarians don't eat fish, of course. Vegetarians and vegans won't eat fish. And there are people who just don't like fish. And there are people who like fish, but hate oily fish because it's too fishy. So it's not uncommon. From a plant-based diet, it's difficult to get omega-3. So walnuts and chia seeds and things like that can definitely give you some, and dark green leafy veg, actually, there are certain things that can give you some omega-3. But yes, the answer is absolutely. When you are looking for a fish oil, and we know that omega-3 can help support egg quality and sperm quality. I think we'll probably talk about that a bit later, in fact, but certainly when you're looking at omega-3, you're looking at good quality, highly purified, and highly concentrated, ideally, as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think,
or a vegan option, an algae-based option, of course.
Algae-based is definitely a good one, because that's where the fish
Absolutely
get the omega-3 from. So we say like an algae-based supplement is brilliant. And I think there's a lot of fear sometimes around oily fish, or just fish in general, because obviously we've got to be thinking about heavy metals and toxins, but there is a lot of research actually around, and they've sort of compared Mediterranean diets, increased protein, looking at fish intake, and definitely fish intake is good, and we want to be aiming for that 2 portions per week. And it's just that good quality sources, or substituting it with a good quality supplement as well.
I agree, absolutely. And I think that also when you're looking at oily fish, the smaller the fish, the less toxic it is, because it hasn't had time to live for a long time and accrue too many toxins. So anchovies and sardines are really some of your best choices of oily fish. The higher up the food chain they go, and the larger they are, potentially the more toxic they are. So you limit the intake of those, really. And white fish are less toxic because they have fewer fat cells. So there are ways of doing it, aren't there?
Yeah, exactly. That's actually why we use fish roe for one of our omega-3 products as well, because it has such a short lifespan before we sort of extract the omega-3 from it. It is just, naturally pure by nature as
absolutely well. No, absolutely. I think there are ways of looking at everything, aren't there? It's easy to become bogged down with stuff that you read. Actually, you can break things down and make them fairly doable and quite sort of normal as well, can't you?
Definitely, 100%. And this is a question that comes up a lot. And to us, I think not just in terms of fertility and IVF, but just general questions. But in terms of fertility specific, IVF specifically, is there a different protein recommendation? And what is that?
So for IVF, absolutely there is. So in the end, so I guess a couple trying to conceive, this is what I will always say, a couple trying to conceive potentially might require more protein than a couple not trying to conceive. So because protein provides the building blocks for growth, eggs and sperm are made of protein, if you like. So it is important to sort of focus on that. And your protein requirements are different depending on how active you are, how tall you are, all sorts of things. There isn't a specific amount. When you get to the IVF, for the female, for the woman, the aim of an IVF cycle is to stimulate your ovaries to mature as many present follicles as possible into an egg. So that's the medication's job. That's the starting point. That's the first challenge, is responding to the medication in order for your ovaries to mature these follicles into eggs. Once that's underway, if you like, your job is to feed them. So we have to feed, and it's not protein, as I said, provide the building blocks for growth. So for me, I really do recommend a significantly increased protein intake for IVF, and not just the moment you start your stimulation. In the end, your body is pretty shocked by that time. You're suddenly bombarded with all these hormones, and to double your protein intake overnight, it's quite a big deal. So I tend to say, try and bring it in a bit more gradually. So ease it up. So maybe a few weeks before you start your stimulation, and then when you're stimming, then you probably increase it further still. And it is hard to get it. What is the amount of protein? It's impossible to say. I tend to say between 70 and 100 grams a day. It really depends on your follicle count, it depends on many things. And trying to get that much in a day can be hard through food. And it is not, a lot of people say, oh, shall I just go out and eat more steaks? That isn't the answer, actually. Just shoving your face full of more meat and stuff isn't the answer. So I do tend to look at protein powders a lot. I do find that for an IVF cycle, looking at some kind of good quality protein powder, and we can go into it if you think it's appropriate, Rebecca. I'm very happy to go into it a little bit about which protein powders are going to be beneficial.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful, actually, just a bit of a steer on if someone is looking to start a protein powder, what they should be looking for.
So if you are don't have any food intolerances and are not vegan, then I tend to recommend a grass-fed, hormone-free whey protein powder. Grass-fed and hormone-free is obvious. Okay, this is clean, this is pure, this is not derived from intensively reared cattle that have been routinely injected with growth hormone and antibiotics. It is not a bodybuilding exercise. It's pure, clean home. Whey is a very good source of an antioxidant called glutathione, and good glutathione levels. And ingesting whey protein has been found to increase glutathione in the blood, in blood. But increasing your glutathione intake is thought to improve egg quality. So that is one thing. That doesn't suit everybody. Okay. If you are lactose intolerant, although generally whey doesn't have much lactose, but if you are vegan or dairy intolerant, this is probably not going to be ideal. The issue I tend to have with a lot of vegan protein powders is that they're generally pea-based or soya-based. Now, in the 50s, peas were studied as contraceptives. They contain a compound that has contraceptive properties. They were a rubbish contraceptive, I have to tell you. They weren't a good contraceptive, and the studies were left behind in the 60s, actually. But the aim of a protein powder is to concentrate a lot into a small amount. And what we don't know, because the studies don't seem to be there, is if it is full of this compound called enzyl hydroquinone. But if it is, and you're spending a lot of money on and you're putting, oh God, sorry to have such a bad pun, you're putting all your eggs in one basket, then actually, I think you want to be careful. And so from a vegan perspective, I would go maybe down the pumpkin seed powder,
Do you
pumpkin
like
seed,
it?
that kind of thing.
I don't love it.
Oh,
Oh, sorry, Isabelle, you've just been muted as well. Let me just unmute you. You should be able to now unmute yourself. There you go. Sorry about that. Yeah,
that's okay. If you want, so I don't know what you heard, but what I'm saying is a good vegan options include things like hemp or pumpkin seed powder, or other seed powders would be good. And if you are not vegetarian or vegan, I think really nice options are collagen peptides, which are tasteless. Again, they should be grass-fed and hormone-free. But they are great ways, and actually the benefit of that as well, lovely for your skin, great for your gut. So there's quite a lot, and it can take the pressure off trying to find the amount of protein you need through food. I think it's not for everybody, but it is certainly a thought and a consideration.
No, brilliant. I think that's really helpful, definitely. And then another really hot topic when it comes to nutrition, food, is blood sugar balance. And again, something that you hear about of, well, you need to control your blood sugar balance, but what exactly does that mean?
So basically, carbohydrates turn into sugar, And when sugar enters the bloodstream, the pancreas has to secrete a hormone called insulin to take it out of the bloodstream. So you get and the more refined your carbohydrate, so white refined flour products, for instance, but also things like sugar, of course. So if you eat a bag of Haribos, your blood sugar is going to spike dramatically. You're going to have lots of sugar going into your bloodstream. The body can't leave it there. So we have to get it out. So the pancreas will secrete insulin to take sugar out of the bloodstream. It then crashes. You then think, oh my God, I feel exhausted. I must pick myself up a little bit. I might have a Diet Coke, or I might have a Kit Kat or something like that. And so it goes on. We get these peaks and troughs. Now, from an egg and sperm perspective, neither eggs nor sperm mature well in a glucose-filled environment. They don't love these sort of surges of glucose. It's not great. And these insulin surges may have a pro-inflammatory effect as well. But also, generally, all our hormones work in connection with each other. Stress hormones, sex hormones, thyroid hormones, they all work synergistically. And the more balanced the hormonal system, the more efficiently the body works. And the more efficiently the body works, the better quality everything's going to be. And this includes egg and sperm quality. So in order to start achieving this hormonal balance, we have to start somewhere, and balancing our blood sugar levels is our starting point for overall hormone balance. So from an IVF perspective, it will help with egg and sperm quality, we think and we hope. And in order to balance your blood sugar levels, it is important to try and eat reasonably regularly. You do not need to eat all the time. We don't need to stuff our face with food left, right and center. In fact, we need a bit of a break. But and we're all different. Some people need to eat a bit more regularly. You don't want to leave long hours without eating. And you should try and include some kind of protein every time you eat, because protein and fat, in fact, they generally come together, reduces the speed at which sugar enters the bloodstream. So it stops this sugar surge and the dip, and it gives you, as you can see in the diagram, a much more gentle rolling hill, if you like, which means the body can get on with what it needs to do more efficiently. And you feel better for it. You have more energy, your cognitive function is more efficient, you sleep better, your mood is better. Actually balancing your blood sugar levels, I mean, forget fertility, I would recommend it to anybody. It makes you feel so much better.
Yeah, brilliant. And a really good question's just come in about, should we avoid consuming fruit through smoothies to prevent blood sugar peaks?
Well, that is a really good question, because we are told we need to have all this brightly coloured stuff. And a lot of people go, oh God, I'm really busy, I'm dashing to work, but I'm going to have a smoothie in the morning. It's great. I can fit my 5 a day in that. We shouldn't be having 5 portions of fruit a day anyway. And I tend to say about smoothies is deconstruct it, put it on a plate. If you can't eat it, you can't drink it, because it's just too much for your system. I think smoothies have a place if you don't have a massive great glass of it, and if you put some protein with it. So you can put some things like some oats for fiber, slow release fiber. You can put nuts and seeds in. You can put in a high protein yogurt. You can put in some protein powder. It will reduce the speed at which it goes in. And I would recommend a smoothie that's got some fruit but also some veg in it as well, preferably. So there is a place, but just a pure sort of fruit smoothie first thing in the morning, you will start your day on a sugar hit. And actually how you eat at the beginning of the day can set the tone as to how your body works over the day, how your blood sugar works, how your weight control is managed. So it's quite, how you eat at the beginning of the day is quite significant, actually.
Yeah, no, that is really helpful. And thank you guys for all of your questions coming through as well. Like I said, if I don't read it out now, we will also get to it in the end as well. So then another topic as well is just thinking about, is there anything that should deplete the body of nutrients, and just extra care that we might need to sort of add in terms of nutrients that we're getting in, and how we're going about that?
Well, yes, I mean, obviously we can't control everything around us. And if we did try to, that adds just a whole load more stress, which we really don't need. So there are things, obviously we have control over what we put in. We want to try and eat wholesomely, get good nutrient-rich foods, etc. Exercise is really important in order to keep our body healthy, to keep the blood flowing, to keep our metabolism going, But there are certain things that can deplete nutrients, things that we can't necessarily control. So stress is one of them, actually. And what we can do with stress is try and help the body respond to it more efficiently. So exercise is a really good one. eating regularly, balancing our blood sugar levels, particularly including a good protein-rich breakfast, is really supportive to adrenal function. Magnesium is very quickly used up when you're stressed, so increasing your magnesium intake. And I often do recommend it as a supplement, actually, if people are highly stressed. But we'll talk about supplements a bit later on. Trying to get good sleep, so that's having a good routine, not looking at your blue screen until sort of 11 o'clock at night, not doing having nice baths. I mean, various medications can deplete nutrients, so it's being aware of, maybe if you are put on a medication that you need to take, is maybe being aware of what nutrients they might deplete, so that you can replenish by taking certain supplements, and looking at your environment, looking at the toxins, things like aerosol sprays and various sort of toxic, if you're burning candles, try and burn natural candles. I mean, try and use natural products around you, cleaning products and things, because they can actually affect how your body works as well. So there are things to do. However, I think it's also easier said than done. I realize that. Try not to obsess about it. It's very easy to obsess. So doing a few things that make you feel good. I think is important. And yeah.
Yeah. And in terms of the exercise, someone has asked if there's any forms of exercise that should actually be avoided in the run up to IVF, and a good level, which I think is hard to know. A good level is very person specific, but is there any sort of just general guidelines that you'd have around that?
Well, I think when you are actually undergoing your stimulation, it is, you are better to limit your exercise to walking and really gentle stuff, because you don't want to be bouncing about while your poor ovaries are at the gym themselves, frankly, doing really hard work. So you don't want to be bouncing about, nor do you want to be directing your blood flow to your extremities, which of course because the better the blood flow, the better the nutrient flow, the better the nutrient flow to the ovaries, the better quality your eggs are going to be. So that is really important. And if you are into exercise, and which is great, what you also don't want to do is fall off a cliff and go, I'm starting my stims on Wednesday, so I'll stop exercising on Tuesday. I used to exercise massively, because your body won't thank you for it, and actually it's going to be a shock to the system. So as you say, Rebecca, it's very personal what some people are very fit and running 4 times a week for 10k or whatever, doesn't they don't bat an eyelid, whereas somebody else would be crawling through the door like me on their hands and knees. So I think the thing is just being aware. So moderate exercise is actually recommended, and as I say, it's impossible for me to say exactly what that is. High intensity, so very intensive HIIT classes and stuff like that, boot camps, not recommended. It is too much stress on the body, because it actually stimulates a stress response. And winding down, I would say winding down over a couple of weeks before you start your stimulation. And this is that some people find it the hardest, because the exercise is for a lot of people is a lifeline to them, and it is a challenge. It is a challenge. So it doesn't mean you have to stop moving completely, but and you need to be guided by your consultant, by your medical team as well. But generally they recommend that while you're stimulating and straight after transfer, you want to keep things calm and quiet.
Yeah, no, really helpful. And I hope that helped answer the question as well. So hopefully your answer is yes to this. Is there anything you can do?
Imagine if I said no.
That'd be a bit of a twist. Anything you can do to improve the quality of egg and sperm?
Yes, absolutely. I believe that wholeheartedly. Currently, there is not a test for egg quality. So we can't test for egg quality. Egg quality is tested in mice and rats and that kind of thing. But in humans, actually, there is not currently an egg quality test. There is a lot of study done on sperm, and we can test sperm in quite a lot of detail. And in the end, eggs and sperm are casings for strands of DNA. And so in the end, what's good or bad for the gander has got to be good or bad for the goose. Plus, they do studies, for instance, on antioxidants. We know that antioxidants improve sperm quality. We know that. There's lots of study done on that. For females, they do it on mice and rats and things like that. We have to assume that human females will also respond. So the answer is, and I can only see it from my experience in working with couples going through IVF. And so, as I say, you can't necessarily see an egg quality improvement because you don't know, but you do see an embryo quality. You see an embryo quality improvement. And as I say, because we know that a lot of study is done on sperm, and including sperm DNA, we have to assume the egg DNA will also respond quite significantly to the same factors.
Yeah, brilliant. We've
That
had
was
a
a very
few...
long-winded way of saying yes. Yes.
No, that was good. I'm glad that it was, yes. We've had lots of questions in about supplements, which we will be coming on, or specific nutrients, which we will be coming on to in a moment. There we go, a little bit now. But maybe I think what's really helpful sometimes when we think about nutrients, when we think about supplements, is actually understanding their function within the egg. So maybe just like a brief summary of kind of what is made up in the egg and what things we should be thinking about then in terms of potentially helping that quality.
So again, so DNA, for instance, strands of DNA require folate, B12 and B6 and zinc, selenium, vitamin D, you know, sort of omega-3 as well. Actually, we need a lot of those in, you know, to support the actual egg quality, if you like. So foods rich in these can be really helpful. Omega-3 is a big one. A lot of people, I find, take multivitamins, which is absolutely right, and this is important, but have omitted to take omega-3. And you know, we don't get enough from the diet, even if we're fish eaters. And omega-3 is so important, isn't it, for the cell membrane? So the cell membrane has to be a certain consistency in order to allow the sperm to enter start, but we know that omega-3 can improve DNA function, for instance, in sperm. So therefore we have to assume it's going to improve the DNA of the egg as well, of the nucleus. Vitamin D, a lot of us are vitamin D deficient, so vitamin D is a really important one, and not only is it important for the quality of the eggs and sperm, it's also vitamin D receptors in the uterus. It's very important for implantation. And yes, so I know that also on this slide we've got coenzyme Q10 and inositol. So inositol, myo-inositol, is often associated with women with polycystic ovaries, and it's a great nutrient to help support ovulation actually and regulate cycles, but it is also found in the follicular fluid and is thought to help with egg maturation. So it's great for anybody actually. And CoQ10 is a potent antioxidant. In every cell of the body, we in the mitochondria, right in the heart of the nucleus of the cell, is where CoQ10 is produced. In all of us, our own production of CoQ10 peaks, it turns out, at age 25, which is really depressing actually. And then as we get older, so really when we're going into our sort of late 40s, 50s, God, you know, we should probably all be taking CoQ10 because actually our own production is very slow. But from an IVF perspective, well, for somebody probably mid to late 30s, early 40s, I would recommend coenzyme Q10 as a for egg quality actually as well. But it's an energy provider, so it's really great for helping egg maturation, and obviously that's really, really important for IVF. I mean, we haven't mentioned all the other nutrients that are you know that are important. These are some of the key ones, obviously, but it's not all about one or two nutrients.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's a lot that makes up the egg.
Absolutely.
And someone asked, just about the inositol. So even if you don't have PCOS, would you still recommend inositol?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I certainly think that it's an appropriate consideration, particularly during an IVF cycle when the maturation of the egg is so important. Because as I said, the aim is obviously for the ovaries to respond to the stimulation, but that's just the first hurdle. Within that, you will generally find that not all of the eggs are collected are mature. So anything that can help with the egg maturation is going to be important. So it can be helpful, certainly, particularly for women with PCOS. That's an absolute one, or women potentially with irregular cycles, but certainly I think it can be helpful for most people, particularly going through an IVF cycle.
Yeah, brilliant. And then, of course, we talked about egg health. We can't then not talk about sperm health as well. So yeah, what sort of nutrients should men be thinking about in terms of optimizing their sperm?
Well, a lot of people don't realize that folate, which is the active form of folic acid, which is synthetic. So we all hear about folic acid. We are advised to take folic acid when we're trying to conceive, but actually I always prefer folate, which is the natural active form, and the body recognizes that it uses it much more efficiently, potentially, than folic acid. And there is quite a high percentage of the population whose bodies don't actually process folic acid very well, and they require, you get improved for folate. But men actually, that it is just as important for sperm quality as it is for egg quality. And in fact, male folate deficiency is potentially linked with miscarriage. So that is just one of them. But folate, as we know, it's important for the female as well, but it requires B12 in order to enter the cells, and it needs B6 to function properly. So these things are really important. Vitamin D, the same. And in fact, certain studies have shown that, in several years ago, there was a big study whereby certainly men who were deficient in folate and vitamin D tended to have the poorer sperm quality. And that was quite pronounced. DNA, which is one of the active components of omega-3. So omega-3 tends to have two active components, EPA and DHA. And for male fertility, particularly, DHA is important for the formation of the sperm head. So again, that's really important in order to be able to enter the egg. It needs to be a certain shape. It's also important for the tail, actually, so for how fast it swims. So again, for the whole production. And we know as well that it may help improve DNA fragmentation. So CoQ10, the same as the females, is good for the energy. It's a potent antioxidant, and an antioxidant basically helps combat cellular damage, if you like. And coenzyme Q10 is definitely something that can help reduce mitochondrial damage. Zinc is found, the seminal fluid is very, very rich in zinc. Zinc is particularly linked with male fertility, and and since men are producing sperm all the time, and when they ejaculate, they lose a lot of sperm. So actually, zinc there needs to be replenished quite a lot more efficiently for men.
Yeah. And just I thought really important to make the distinction here, because it's very confusing. They're very similar names. Someone asked about DHEA, and just the distinction from DHA, because they are I think sometimes they can be used interchangeably, but actually they are very different, aren't they?
Completely different, and there is a lot of confusion. Okay, so yeah, really good point. So DHA, just 3 letters, is an active component of omega-3. That's essentially what it is. It is part of omega-3. It's appropriate prior to conception for male and female. It's important, in my opinion, through pregnancy, in order to, because the brain has a high level of DHA, a high concentration of DHA, so it's really important for the baby's brain development, etc. DHEA is a hormone. It's not a supplement. It is actually a hormone. In the UK, you can only get it via prescription. In the US and other countries, it is treated as a supplement. You can buy it over the counter, as it happens. But it is a hormone, and it's known as the mother hormone. It is the hormone from which our steroid hormones, our sex and our stress hormones, if you like, are created. So, and again, as we age, potentially our own production of DHEA might diminish. But the issue with DHEA is you can't necessarily control which pathway it favors. So for women, particularly for somebody, for instance, a woman who's got PCOS, whose testosterone levels would naturally probably be on the higher side, DHEA probably wouldn't be recommended, because it may raise testosterone even more, and increase testosterone that is too high might damage egg quality. So it is very much something that, in my opinion, needs to be treated by a medical person, and it's something that it's not something just to be, but it is difficult, because I've had several people saying to me, oh my God, why have you recommended DHEA? And well, I haven't. So yeah, very, very good point, Rebecca. We need to learn the distinction with that.
No, brilliant. And then we actually had a question on this earlier as well. It was just about sort of when we should start preparing those sort of nutritional changes, supplements. When should they be taking place, and what is that sort of time frame?
If you've got the time, and I say that because it is not. It often happens that people will go to maybe a clinic, and their consultant will say, oh, you know, where are you? Oh, look, we can start you in a couple of weeks, you know, and the ball is set rolling much more quickly. In an ideal world, yes, the maturation cycle of eggs and sperm is roughly 2.5 to 3 months. So in an ideal world, if you've got the time and you've got the knowledge of when you are undergoing your cycle. And I also tend to make the distinction as we're talking egg and sperm collection. That is not the beginning of the cycle. You know, the beginning of the cycle is you know, some people are ejaculate, that you know, sometimes it takes several weeks. So it is really using up to the time when you actually collect the eggs and the sperm is what we're looking at. But ideally 2.5 to 3 months, but it's never too late, you know. And a lot of people go, well, I'm just starting IVF next week, I know it's far too late. But actually, like I've just said, well, if you're starting next week, by the time you've taken this and done that, actually egg collection is not going to be for another 5 weeks. That gives you 6 weeks. It's pretty good. Yeah. That's not bad. Yeah. And a lot of studies are actually done, a lot of sperm studies are done with less time than 3 months, because you don't always get the compliance, and really good results or improvements are seen within a much shorter time period. And that includes the probiotics, I think we're going to talk about a bit later on, doesn't it? Certainly. Yeah. And so I think it's never too late, because, you know, I do think that there is room to you know, even 6 weeks before, or 5 weeks before, you definitely got time for the collection. I mean, definitely got time. But if you've got the time and you know, then about 3 months before would be a good starting point. But it isn't mandatory, and it is definitely worth doing it with less time. Yeah, no, brilliant. And then just some of the sort of steps you can sort of be working through, I guess, in that 3 months. And tying into this, someone actually did ask earlier about just the question, the suggested intake of caffeine, and whether that is something that should be avoided during this 3-month period as well. Again, so caffeine can be a problem for both male and female. Preconceptual caffeine consumption is potentially linked with miscarriage, i.e. it can damage reproductive cells, and it can affect fertility. So it, you know, again, one size doesn't fit all. We all know of people who mainline, you know, coffee and sort of pop out kids left, right, and center. So it's not the same for everybody, but there definitely is study done, and we know that it can be an issue. I am loath to take everybody's joy away from them, because this whole situation is stressful enough as it is. I tend to say, if you are a coffee drinker, for instance, there's more caffeine in coffee than in tea. Maybe limit it to 1 caffeinated coffee a day. And if you're going for the ritual and the aroma and stuff, maybe look at your next one, or 1 or 2 naturally decaffeinated. So there are a couple of different types of decaffeination. Try and use a natural, like a Swiss water or a steam method, where it's not done with chemicals. Watch your tea intake and stuff. I do tend to say try and aim to be caffeine free by the time you get to your sort of starting point of the stims, maybe, or certainly to transfer. And what you don't want to do is cling on to your last cup of coffee until the day before you get your embryo transfer, because it might give you a banging headache, and going into transfer feeling ill, terrible. So I think you know, and sometimes even 1 cup of tea a day, I've known people who are that sensitive, just 1 cup of tea a day will give them headaches. But in an ideal world, you know, trying to limit your caffeine, but it's not just the woman, the man needs to limit it as well, because people don't seem to tell them that, and it is really, really important. Yeah. And then just if we focus on the last one about reducing inflammation, because again, I think it's one of these points that we sort of say, but exactly, what does that mean? And how is that done as well? So there are certain nutrients, essentially inflammation. So if you have any autoimmune conditions, so that can be eczema, asthma, hives, hay fever. It can be people who've had immune, and you know, potentially things like endometriosis. You know, there are lots of things that the body is sort of overacting or reacting, you know, to something it maybe shouldn't. It's a pro-inflammatory response. These are all inflammation. You know, eczema is raised, it's itchy. Bloating, it's a pro-inflammatory response. Do you see what I mean? So that there are all sorts of High stress can be linked with inflammation. Now, we can't always control our stress, but what we can do, as we say, is try and look after ourselves as much as we do during the stressful times, give ourselves things that will make us feel better as well. And certain nutrients, so magnesium, for instance, is very anti-inflammatory. Omega-3 is very anti-inflammatory. So when you have a pro-inflammatory condition, such as endometriosis, and polycystic ovaries, PCOS actually is also a pro-inflammatory condition. In making sure that your intake of nutrients that have anti-inflammatory potential, I think, is really important. And if you know that you bloat terribly when you eat a bowl of pasta or a baguette, and so therefore wheat or gluten or even yeast or something can be pro-inflammatory, avoid it. Avoid things that may cause a pro-inflammatory reaction. Dairy is a difficult one, because a lot of people I find say, oh, I've been told that dairy is really pro-inflammatory. Actually, it's not for everybody. In fact, for some people, it's actually anti-inflammatory. So it's really being aware of whether or not it affects you. A lot of people realize that it makes them a bit snotty or a bit gassy, or people can sort of generally feel, or their skin, it increased acne or something like that, which is pro-inflammatory. So I think it's really, and this is where also the intensive exercise we spoke about before, that has that can be linked with inflammation. So and things like reducing processed foods and lots of sugar is very pro-inflammatory actually, and processed foods and chemicals, they the body tends to react in a pro-inflammatory way to that. So it's looking at the diet, reducing processed red meat, reducing red meat per se, reducing limiting your dairy to sort of easy to digest dairy, so like Mediterranean cheeses and yogurts and things like that. So there are ways of looking at inflammation. It's quite a big topic.
Yes, no, it is. I threw that one at you, but you answered as well someone's question earlier, so hopefully that has cleared it up for you. They asked about regarding cow's milk, a bit of conflicting information. So I guess your point is you've just got to sort of be in tune with your body. For some people,
and actually milk is probably the most difficult dairy to digest. So a lot of people find that they can't do milk, but they can eat yogurt quite happily, because yogurt obviously is partially fermented and it has probiotics in it. And so cow's milk, a glass of cow's milk probably is the most difficult, but maybe sheep's yogurt or goat's cheese and things, or buffalo mozzarella, can be much easier on the system. So it's maybe looking at that kind of thing. And we're back to the Mediterranean as well, because if you look at a lot of Mediterranean style, if you think about the countries that border the Mediterranean, they're quite rocky, they've got lots of sheep and goats rather than cows ambling around, that kind of thing. That can be helpful. But it's very individual. It is individual. You really have to find out, either get yourself tested or be aware of how you're reacting, I think.
Yeah, brilliant. And just to note as well, I know we have vitamin A on the slide there, but that is always the vegetarian form of beta carotene that we recommend.
So vitamin A, again, so many people understandably get very freaked out. The NHS recommendations is not to have any vitamin A when you're pregnant. And so many people have said, why have you recommended this supplement? It's got vitamin A in it. I would always recommend, so there are two forms of vitamin A. There's the sort of what's called vitamin A, which is found in things like liver and that, it's sort of that kind of thing. And actually in a lot of anti-aging creams and things, you mustn't forget those types of things. And you've got the beta carotene vitamin A, which is vegetarian. The body will convert it as and when it needs it to the vitamin A it needs. So it is, you can overdose on anything, but it's very, very difficult to have too much of it, really. It's really important for fetal development. Beta carotene actually can help potentially with increased progesterone production. It may help with implantation. It's thought to help with well, we sort of know it helps sperm quality. We have to assume it helps egg quality. So it's actually really important, and it's anti-inflammatory, because vitamin A is really good for mucous membranes, and the mucous membranes in the gut and things are really important for keeping inflammation down. And actually that's another thing with inflammation is probiotics. So gut health is really important, because inflammation starts in the gut. So it's not just looking, it's looking at gut health as well.
So brilliant, really, really helpful. And then a big nutrient that we spoke about earlier in terms of both sperm and egg health, I think it's always good to sort of focus on is, CoQ10 ubiquinol. So if you're able, I know there's a lot of research coming out about it at the moment, but just a bit of an overview about what exactly it is, what it's doing, and why it is something that you will find, and probably if you're watching this, you might have heard of CoQ10 as well, why it is recommended so much.
So we all have CoQ10 within. It's found in every living cell, both plant and animal, actually, and created ourselves. It's an energy provider. So our energy molecule is something called ATP, and that requires CoQ10 in order to be produced and therefore to give us energy, if that makes sense. So it's part of our energy production, but it also is a potent antioxidant. It can combat cellular damage, so mitochondrial damage in the cell, and as such, it's thought to be anti-aging. Probably one of the reasons as well is as we age, our own production of CoQ10 becomes less efficient, and our conversion of CoQ10 becomes less efficient because there are two forms of CoQ10. So from an egg and sperm quality perspective, the studies with eggs, they are done with women going through IVF, actually, because as we know, we can't really tell with egg quality. And so, but it improves IVF outcome, and thought to work on two basics, if you like. One is as an antioxidant boost to help reverse cellular damage, and the other one is as an energy provider because it will help with egg maturation, which will help with, you know, more eggs, etc. But certainly for men, they've done quite a lot of studies with sperm and CoQ10, ubiquinol and ubiquinone, and it definitely improves many parameters of sperm health, including the DNA fragmentation, which is the important bit. The sperm has to look a certain way. It has to in the right direction. It's got to, there's all sorts of things it needs to do, but in the end, it's the contents that are going to be discharged into the egg and to produce the embryo. So those are super important. It can be as pretty as it likes, it needs to be good inside as well. And so the DNA is really, really, really important. So CoQ10 is really helpful, and it is also anti-inflammatory. It has anti-inflammatory potential. So particularly with women with PCOS and endometriosis, actually, CoQ10 is thought to help improve fertility outcomes with these women because of its antioxidant, but it's also its anti-inflammatory potential. And it is thought to help potentially improve endometrial health, and it may help with implantation. So there's lots of benefits for CoQ10. Do we want to talk about the forms, or are we going to talk about that later?
Yes. So we will actually do, because you did mention the two different forms, because it is, again,
there we go.
Everything has very similar names, I find. It's very confusing with this as well, but there are, two forms of CoQ10. So you want to just cover what those are and what then to look at.
So the traditional form, if you like, of CoQ10, coenzyme Q10, is ubiquinone. That is its traditional form. And actually, that is the form when people are asked to take 600 milligrams of CoQ10 for IVF. The studies are done with ubiquinone. And ubiquinone is the oxidized form that is non-active and needs to be converted in the body. Okay, so you need to use a certain amount of energy. And in fact, as we get older, and when I mean, you know, I'm talking sort of older, our conversion is not as effective. The ubiquinol is the active body ready form that doesn't need converting, and so therefore it hits the ground running, basically. And so the studies show that having a ubiquinol supplement tends to that it improves the levels in the bloodstream more efficiently, and so, you know, it is a better way of taking it, and you need less of it. You don't need the 600 milligrams of it, I don't think. I think the studies are done with 200 milligrams. Is that correct? Particularly with the Canaca ubiquinol.
Yes. So ubiquinol 200 milligrams.
Maybe, you know, increasing it a little bit during stimulation when your body is under greater duress, but you don't need to take tons and tons of it. And I do see a lot of people whose clinics have told them to take very high doses. The body can only use so much at a time, actually. Certainly the other thing is not to take it all at once, because you will lose a lot of the potency, the efficiency of it, because the body can only process so much at a time. It is better to be taken in divided doses.
Yeah, brilliant. No, really, really helpful. And hope, yeah, we had a question on that earlier, so hopefully that has cleared that up for you as well. And then we are coming to the end, so last 10 minutes, then we'll be taking more of your questions. But just quickly, yeah, just a little bit on mindset as well. We obviously spoke about stress. Again, one of the things easier said than done to manage, especially when you're going through
Much easier stress than done. And sometimes worrying about stress makes you more stressed. So it's I think we all have stress. Some people's jobs are stressful, some people's families are stressful, some people's friends. Do you know what I mean? That there's different stresses around us. We can't control them all. I think sometimes it's accepting what stresses you have, but it's learning, as I say, how to manage them. So from a nutritional perspective, your first port of call is balancing your blood sugar levels, actually, because particularly having protein at breakfast, which supports adrenal function, eating, so you eating magnesium rich foods and high fiber foods, all sorts of things. B vitamin rich foods. B vitamins are so important for stress as well. But also so the way you eat is really important. Reducing your caffeine, because of course it's a stressor. Caffeine is what's called a stressor. It increases your stress, and a lot of people think it gives them energy. It actually doesn't give you energy at all. It creates a sugar hit, which then you think you have energy, but you don't really. So, but it can increase your stress response. So if you have a high stress environment, really watching your caffeine is really important. And the mind-body connection. So things like, some people love yoga, some people like meditation, reflexology, acupuncture, massage. I think it depends who you are and what you like. Having a bath in Epsom salts with lavender oil for 15 minutes, listening to, Mozart. I mean, actually, Mozart has been proven to reduce cortisol levels. In fact, if it's played correctly, there's certain music, and I think the cadence is the way that it's produced, can actively reduce cortisol levels. So there's all sorts of different things. Laughter, I know that it sounds silly, but genuinely it can reduce. So I think it's looking at things that you can do around your life that will also help, rather than just fixating. And actually, I think a lot of people find that putting a nutritional program together and focusing a bit on that as well, and knowing that they've got some tools and some nutrients that they know that is important, some foods that they know that are important, that takes a lot of stress out as well, because they're doing something practical and proactive. And the gentle exercise as well. Lots of people find that actually some exercise is so if you don't do any exercise at all, just walking, and just doing a few things to help move everything. And actually walking, if you can, not everybody can do this, but even walking for within an hour of eating something, even for 10 or 15 minutes, can help your blood sugar levels. It reduces insulin function. So insulin levels, it improves insulin function, in fact. So there's lots of things you can do to help your body, rather than focusing on the fact that you're so stressed, because actually that's probably the worst thing you can do.
Yeah, no, definitely. And a question as well just come in, and it sort of links into this as well. Is acupuncture something you recommend for IVF?
Absolutely, I do. Obviously, it's not my discipline, but I work a lot with acupuncturists. There's a lot of study done on acupuncture and fertility, in fact. And, it's got, I mean, I'm not going to be able to give it justice at all, but certainly, it can help with hormone balance. It can help with blood flow. It can help with all sorts, relaxing and stuff. I mean, way more things than that I can't tell you because I don't know, but I do highly recommend it. And they have done studies to show that it can help improve egg quality. It can improve, certainly acupuncture before and after transfer can improve the chances of implantation. But I do believe that just those two aren't often enough, and just having a few sessions, but it's always worth trying to find and you need a good rapport, of course. If you hate needles, it's not going to be for you, to be fair, but I think a lot of people find it really helpful, and there's certainly a lot of study done on it. I think you hit things with whatever works for you, because it's not all about what you put in your body. It is all about all sorts of things going on the outside as well.
Yeah, definitely. And we've had quite a few questions about supplements now, and it is a very, very big topic, so we will be relatively brief, but hopefully this will give you a little bit of guidance about where you should be looking and where to be starting. But firstly, just touching on sort of our foundation nutrients for IVF. And what you should be focusing on, Isabelle. I don't know if you just want to run through maybe who this sort of routine would be suitable for.
Yeah, so the first port of call, and it doesn't matter how old you are or whatever, always have a multivitamin, and that's female, obviously male and female, but, you know, prenatal multivitamin, I tend to recommend always something with folate rather than folic acid. If the ingredients are active, the body recognizes them, uses them more efficiently, you know, it is better, you know, you sort of, it is better for you. And folate requires B12, as I mentioned before. It needs B6 to function properly. So those, but we also need things, yeah, zinc, selenium is a potent antioxidant. It's important for thyroid function as well. Iodine is really important. Most multivitamins contain iodine. You know, so there are lots of nutrients that beta carotene, I mean, that are really important. And with IVF, because the aim is to mature several eggs, food is it's always important. Food first, always. The supplement should be just that, but I do think that you do need to take supplements down the IVF cycle because your body needs more. So that would be always the basic. Vitamin D. Most of us, not everybody, but a high percentage of people tend to be low in vitamin D, particularly in the winter. In fact, stats used to show that IVF had better results in the summer than the winter, and the thinking was potentially, one of the thinkings was that because vitamin D levels were better in the summer. So I think, and vitamin D is not, it's not an efficient way of getting, food is not a great way of getting vitamin D. It's the sunshine vitamin D, vitamin. You either you get the sun or you take a supplement, in my opinion. I think that's really going to be the only way. So vitamin D, really important. And however, you can have too much of a good thing as well. So you have to be careful. Vitamin D is fat soluble. It can build up. We've got on this form, actually 1,000 IUs is there. That's particularly safe. Probably not enough during the winter, but it's a safe thing to be going on with, certainly. And again, the only way really of knowing how to dose yourself with vitamin D is to get tested. And the aim is to increase your vitamin D and then plateau it. So it's not suitable to take, appropriate to take a high dose long term. It can have detrimental effects. Omega-3, because it's harder to get it through the diet. So yeah, getting omega-3 I think is really, really important. So that, you know, and then going through IVF, ubiquinol, I would always recommend people take CoQ10, preferably in the ubiquinol form, just because your body needs more, you know, needs a lot more energy. And the probiotic. So the probiotic that we mean there is one that's specifically designed to support the vaginal microbiome, because both the gut, there is a gut microbiome and a vaginal microbiome. They talk to each other, actually, and the gut microbiome is really important. But the vaginal microbiome, well, I think you're going to talk about it a bit later on, aren't you? Becky, you know, maybe in a bit more detail. But it may help improve the chances of implantation and reduce the risk of miscarriage. And, you know, the first challenge is to get a good quality embryo, but the challenge doesn't end there.
Yeah. No, brilliant. So, and sorry, I've just noticed that it says healthy sperm production at the top. Sorry, that is copied over from men's slide. But so we will come on to the minute. But yeah, it's about, yeah, obviously the folate for neural tube defects. And then we sort of go into like ultimate IVF prep with a few more nutrients. So I guess it's just working on those. So maybe, yeah, who would this be more suitable for, and maybe who would need a bit of extra support?
Okay, so as you know, as we get older, and you know, you can be extremely fertile at 40, to be fair, but generally the understanding is that egg quality can start declining as you get beyond 35 and into your late 30s. There is a higher risk of miscarriage sort of beyond 39 and in your early 40s, and that can be linked with because of a higher chance of chromosomal abnormality. So this is where the DNA comes in, and we really have to support the DNA. So increasing antioxidant status and making sure that you're optimizing your nutrient intake is really, really important in order to help support this. NAC and alpha lipoic acid are also potent antioxidants. I probably wouldn't recommend them particularly to a 30-year-old unless maybe she's got PCOS and or endometriosis, because both of them have been studied with these conditions and have beneficial effects for both of them, anti-inflammatory, hormone regulatory. And I think, yeah, with alpha lipoic acid, there's a little bit of a sort of asterisk there, because there is a potential query about whether or not you can take it if you're taking levothyroxine, which is if your thyroid is under functioning. It may interfere with that, and so it is I would tend not to advise it. If you're taking thyroxine, I would tend not to advise you to take alpha lipoic acid. If you're not, I think it's got a lot of benefits, including it's been found to have benefits in pregnancy, actually, but maybe that's another story. And magnesium, I think most people benefit from magnesium when they do, you know, population studies and stuff. A very high percentage of the population is magnesium deficient. We use it up a lot when we're stressed. It is so important for all aspects of fertility and implantation and pregnancy. In fact, magnesium requirements are increased in pregnancy. So I do think it may help increase the chances of implantation, improve egg quality, and reduce the chance of miscarriage. So I think magnesium, again, if you've got endometriosis, it tends to go hand in hand with lower magnesium, as does PCOS. If you are super stressed, I do think that is something else to be, you know, because not everybody is stressed. You know, people who are going through IVF maybe for egg freezing or for you know, different reasons. So doesn't always come with huge stress, but when there is big stress involved in areas of life, I think it's important to be aware of that.
Yeah, great. And then we've got loads of really specific questions about supplements, but I would say it's always a bit of a personalized approach. So we will come onto a slide. We do offer free product consultations as well. So it'd be definitely worth chatting with either Isabelle or myself as well to go into a little bit more detail on that. And there you go. Then just quickly on male supplements as well, what men should be thinking about, because it's not all on the women. Men also can be taking.
Absolutely not. I mean, as I say, folate as important for the man as for a woman. So a very basic for a man, even if his sperm looks fine, by the way, I would say a good quality multivitamin, preferably with folate in. Vitamin D, same thing. Omega-3, same thing. Those would be the basics. But if there are any issues with sperm, potentially with motility, morphology, count, all of the above, then there are various things that can really improve count, you know, motility, things like L-carnitine, acetyl L-carnitine. There's various things. Alpha lipoic acid, great actually, and NAC is great for sperm. Even inositol has been studied with sperm, in fact. So there's a lot of things that can really support sperm, and of course there is a seminal microbiome as well, which I know that you're going to touch on in a minute.
Brilliant. And then just when we say, we've obviously touched upon sort of the egg, the sperm, but then actually once you are then preparing for transfer, is there anything that should be changing and anything we should be focusing on in a bit more detail?
Well, once you have had egg collection, obviously your protein requirements can start. You could start diminishing your protein intake. I wouldn't, if you're taking quite a punchy dose amount of protein in a mixture of food and protein powder, maybe, I wouldn't suddenly stop everything from one day to the next. Ease it off, take 2 or 3 days to reduce. And essentially, otherwise blood flow, which remains important even, you know, for egg quality as well, because the better the blood flow. But for the endometrium, you know, good blood flow is really important. I often recommend things like, you know, pomegranate juice and beetroot juice. There's all sorts of things that can help support blood flow. This is where obviously acupuncture can really help. Good breathing, yogic breathing and stuff like that. Inflammation, so reducing inflammation, absolutely. And that would be the next one. Actually, the vaginal microbiome can really help reduce inflammation, but also through a food perspective. So this is where actually, if somebody does feel that maybe they do sort of react to gluten or wheat or whatever, that this is, you know, it's really, it is important not to really sort of take focus on that and take notice and not having things that have pro-inflammatory effects within the body. And the nutrients for implantation, zinc, well, selenium is really important, vitamin D, really important for implantation, folate, vitamin E, essentially a whole host of nutrients, really. It's antioxidants. So it has been shown that an increased antioxidant intake can improve the uterine environment, improve endometrial health. So, you know, lots of it's the rainbow colors. It's really similar. The main difference is that you don't need all this protein. You still need protein, of course, to thicken the endometrial lining, but you don't need sort of excess amounts of protein, which really maybe we do need when we're going for the IVF cycle. So otherwise the things do remain similar. There isn't that much difference.
No, that is really helpful. And then, yeah, our last bit now is just, a bit more upon the vaginal microbiome. So I know there's been a few questions on this and quite a big topic at the moment, I guess, of research. So and like you said about the vaginal microbiome, it is interacting with the gut. And the way I sort of describe it to people and how to think about what is the sort of healthy microbiome is we do want it dominant in this bacteria called lactobacillus, and actually over 90%. And day to day, this just keeps the environment really acidic. It's going to deter pathogens, reduce the risk of things like UTIs, bacterial vaginosis. But really interesting, we now know that having that acidic environment can also support implantation, but also the actual process of the sperm being able to make its way to the egg as well. So we know these bacteria are playing a really important role. So it is something at Zita West that we do really encourage thinking
Absolutely.
about the microbiome and thinking about a probiotic and thinking about one that is specific for the vagina, because your gut is actually really, we talk about, we want a really rich diversity in your gut. That's completely different when we think about the vagina as well. So it is about sort of nurturing that relationship and for implantation, but then also during that sort of early, we're going to go on to a little bit at the end, the 2-week wait, but it plays a really significant role sort of during that whole process as well. And also particularly for actually PCOS and endometriosis.
Absolutely.
There's some, really interesting studies about that as well, and about how those with PCOS and endometriosis might have a difference in that bacteria. We see a lot of high levels of inflammation in the microbiome as well, which can help reduce it as well. So definitely an area where it's worth focusing on. I don't know if there's anything you want to add, Isabelle, to that.
Well, no, I think you've and you're absolutely right. And some of it's not just for IVF. You're absolutely right. It's for the implantation. It used to be called years ago, people used to talk about hostile mucus, but that's exactly what it is. Essentially, if it's not predominant in the Lactobacillus species, it can affect the sperm's trajectory and it can stop the sperm actually getting up. So from a natural conception perspective as well, that's one thing, but also, as you say, yes, to help improve and reduce inflammation. And I think it's, everybody fixates about the egg, the embryo quality, but now actually fertility clinics are also looking at various tests to test the microbiome. They're much more open to it now. But I think for me it's like, if you're going to go through this, look at everything, and that includes the microbiome. Don't just look at whether you've got a good quality embryo, because it does not give, even if you have a euploid embryo, which is a chromosomally normal embryo, it does not give you a guarantee you will get a pregnancy. So anything you can do to support the environment, and probably all of us should really have a bit like an MOT every year, whereby we all take some probiotics just to recharge ourselves. I would have really, because life and chemicals in the world gets in the way, and it can deplete us everywhere.
Because on that, someone actually did ask if they should take a probiotic all the time or just doing IVF.
Well, I don't know what you think about this, Rebecca. I think that that it would be good to take a probiotic for at least a couple of months, sort of non-stop, really. And then after that, even if you didn't take it daily, I don't think it would matter that much, do you? I mean, I think once
No, so that's like the beauty, I think, of probiotics, that you don't have to take them continuously. I say for IVF, if you're taking a vaginal specific one, we know that there is a significant improvement in the microbiome after 10 weeks. So I would be working in that time frame as much as possible. And actually with Sperm Health as well, we know that taking a sperm-specific probiotic can have anti-inflammatory, antioxidant benefits. You see a much quicker result, actually just 3 weeks. There's a significant improvement on things like motility. But I would say for long-term use, you don't have to take them daily, but taking a small dose every so often, just taking a capsule every couple of weeks can also be beneficial. And also someone asked if taking a vaginal probiotic, so actually inserting it vaginally. What I would say about that, so our one we recommend orally for a couple of reasons. One, inserting it vaginally can increase the risk of infection, because the fecal microbiome and the vaginal microbiome completely different. We need to be we're not those bacteria shouldn't sort of be crossed over as such. You can increase your risk of infection, but also because we know that there's that interplay between the gut and the vagina, if you are only targeting the vaginal microbiome and it's an imbalance with your gut, that's actually, you're not sort of hitting the more of the root cause. So actually taking it orally can have that sort of double benefit as well by going via your gut as well.
And the
So,
vaginal microbiome remains important in pregnancy as well, actually.
yeah,
So it's you know, particularly to women who might be prone to thrush or UTIs and stuff, I think it's important to continue with that.
100%.
Yeah.
Definitely. And then just finally coming to the last sort of part of, well, not the last part of the IVF, but last thing we'll think about the 2 week
the most
wait.
stressful part, actually, to be fair.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, the 2 week wait. So is there anything in sort of what we've said in terms of diet, lifestyle, supplements that we should be then adjusting at this point?
Well, I tend to say after transfer, so if you're taking ubiquinol or CoQ10, although it is not, there is no known toxicity, there is not enough study, there is no study really done in early pregnancy, so we cannot recommend that you take it following transfer. So that would certainly be something. I mean, you know, taking high doses of certain antioxidants, I think it's unnecessary. I think once you've had transfer, you also don't want to be bombarding yourself with too much stuff. So there are certain nutrients, depending on what you're taking, that maybe you look at avoiding, you know, once you've had once you've had transfer. But from a food perspective, that it's carrying on much the same, but avoiding foods that potentially would not be recommended in pregnancy. That sort of tends to be what I would recommend. So, you know, if I wouldn't go and have a brie fest or something, you know, or, you know, or raw oysters. I mean, I think it's being sensible. It's being sensible so that, you know, not having things but otherwise it's really the same from a food perspective. And I think, you know, lifestyle, you don't want to be, you know, training for a triathlon straight after you've had, you know, you want to take it easy. I probably wouldn't start spring cleaning my house from top to bottom. But you know what I mean? I think actually we just have to carry on. There isn't anything specific. People always say, oh, is there specific things I need to do with my diet? There isn't. Actually there isn't. It's the same sort of thing as you'd be doing before, really.
Brilliant, perfect.
But
well,
focusing on blood flow, by the way, the one thing I would keep saying is do continue with the blood flow things and stuff, because actually that remains important. Implantation takes place over the 3 to 4 days after transfer. You know, you still want that embryo. It's embryo. It's just a bunch of cells to divide and divide and divide and divide. So you want to get the nutrients to it. So yeah, but there's nothing specific.
Yeah. Well, no, brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Isabelle, for sharing all of your knowledge, and hopefully you all found that informative and it's given you some few tips. So just some information to stay up to date. We are on Instagram. We also have our website as well, plenty of blog posts on there, which you can read some more information. And then if you haven't already joining the mailing list, you can do that from our website, just so you stay up to date with all of the events that we're doing, future webinars. And like I said, for some of the questions, when they are quite specific to supplements for a specific condition, we won't be able to answer on here, but it's definitely worth booking a consultation so you can speak with either myself or Isabelle. It's no obligations. It's not a pushy call. It's just hopefully a really informative way for you just to break down a bit of the supplements and understand exactly what you need. So I'll leave that up for a minute if you did want to scan that QR code, and it'll take you to the booking page. But Isabelle, can I just take a last few minutes of your time just to answer any of the last questions? Amazing, thank you. So just getting the questions up. So do you suggest, so this I think was asked when we were talking about nutrients for egg health, and someone asked, do you suggest this? We are only going for egg retrieval and they're using a surrogate. Is there anything sort of different you would recommend, or anything that maybe wouldn't be applicable?
So no, because you need the quality of the eggs and the sperm. And so essentially, the main difference is that you're not going to have implantation. So potentially, I'm guessing, I mean, I would say if you are potentially prone to thrush or UTIs, I would still take a probiotic specifically for the vaginal microbiome. If you're absolutely, that's never been a problem, or and you've got no inflammation going on, potentially maybe that's not going to be so important, and it's really just gearing up to egg quality and sperm quality. But in the main, I would treat it because everything else is going to, you still want the blood flow. You need the blood flow to the uterus. You need the things that can support egg quality. Your gut microbiome remains really, really important as well. So the same sort of things, but it's really not for the implantation. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then a question on folate. So we recommend folate over folic acid, and someone's just asked, is folate the same as L-methylfolates?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Essentially, folate is what you find in food, and when it's in a supplement form, it tends to be called methylfolate.
Yeah.
Some kind of methylfolate. There's various different permutations, aren't there?
Yeah, sometimes it can be quite confusing.
Yeah, it can be. It can be
different names.
Yeah,
but
as long as it's not folic acid, basically. Or some places say folic acid brackets as methylfolate, in which case that'll be fine as well.
yes,
but yeah,
but always something to look out for. And a question about NAC. Is NAC recommended for all females doing IVF?
Not necessarily. I think that if it can be, it certainly would be, it's a potent antioxidant. So it's great for egg quality and sperm quality, in fact. It is anti-inflammatory. It has been studied with recurrent miscarriage. And actually the studies are done once a pregnancy has been confirmed, and then actually NAC and folate help reduce the risk of miscarriage after a certain, so that may help. It is particularly good for women with PCOS and women with endometriosis, and there have been studies with both of those. It can help with hormone balance. It's anti-inflammatory. It can reduce pain in women with endometriosis. It's got lots of benefits in that respect. A very small amount of people find that it can upset their digestion. It's unlikely, but it can happen. That would be the only thing I might say. But on the whole, it's unlikely, but it's possible. But but if you are, under 35 and there's no particular issue, I'm not sure whether you'd need to take it. It's not going to hurt, by the way. It's also known as a sort of a youth nutrient.
Yeah. And then a question just about actually how food is stored. I think we talked about it earlier, a little bit about plastics, but just I've heard plastic isn't good, but then so many things come in plastic boxes. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
I know, yeah, it's a difficult one. So plastic, particularly malleable plastics, so things like cling film, are, they are much more likely to. So plastics contain compounds that are thought to have hormone disrupting properties, and not great from a fertility perspective for sort of sperm and things. So, for instance, a lot of tins are lined in plastic. So if you have tin tomatoes and things, it's very possible and very easy to find things without that. Actually, you can get cartons, you can get jars. There are also certain tins that don't have, some organic brands don't have any plastics. If you are in control, if you use a microwave, do not microwave in plastic. Don't wrap your cheddar cheese in plastic, because anything fatty is much more likely to leach these hormone disrupting chemicals. And where you have control, so if you've got a lunchbox, get a bamboo one. You can buy them which are BPA free, which is bisphenol A, which is one of the specific sort of chemicals. There are more, or store things in your fridge in glass jars. So, but again, I think it's not getting so het up that you don't dare go out anymore, or do you know what I mean? I think it's being sensible about it. But yes, there is a potential issue with some plastics.
Yeah, no, really helpful. And then I think just a final question, which is myo-inositol different to inositol?
No, generally, there is something also called chiro-inositol. Generally, myo-inositol is the one that has been most studied with sort of PCOS and egg quality and stuff like that. So on the whole, if you see a supplement that says inositol, it's probably going to be the Zita West product is myo-inositol. To find out, you just look at the nutrient label on the back, basically, and it will tell you.
Yeah, but definitely, yes, that's sort of minoxidil that we'd recommend. And then
It's the minoxidil that we would recommend over the Chironositol, yes.
yes,
Or
yeah.
sometimes they come with two, but yeah, I would definitely recommend that you look at myoinositol, that's for sure.
Yes, yeah. And if you did actually, just something that's always worth mentioning, if you do ever look at the so the Zita West one, we actually add folate. We use a term quatropholate, which is a very good, well-researched form of that active form of folic acid. But just remember that it's not the 400 micrograms.
Yes.
So you would need to take it alongside a prenatal. But there is the small amount just to help support preconception levels. And that's also still safe as well. I know obviously the NHS advises 20 micrograms, but you can take extra and it's well within, that safe limits as well.
Absolutely. In the States, the recommended dose of folate is 800, just sort of straight off. So which illustrates that it's pretty safe. So just taking that extra couple of hundred is perfectly safe. And in some women can be extremely beneficial, actually.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you so much. That does take us to the end. So Isabelle, thank you so much for your time and sharing all of your incredible wisdom. I really hope that you found this webinar informative and gave you some few next steps for your IVF journey. And if you do have any other questions, please pop us an email. If you actually just reply to the email that you got to confirm the webinar, or go to our website, you can email us as well. And also, if you want to book a consultation, you can do so as well via that QR code. But thank you everyone so much for your time. A recording is also going to be sent out. Give us a little bit of time. We'll try to do it within and that sort of 48 hours. But as soon as we have it ready, we'll also send you over a recording if you wanted to watch any part back as well. But I hope everyone has a wonderful evening. And Isabelle, thank you again for joining us.
You're welcome. Love to see you. Bye.
Bye.